All right, again, if you're just tuning in, welcome. Please share this. I'm super excited to have this conversation with the women that I have here today. So welcome everybody to our Smart Justice Town Hall. Tonight we're going to be talking to justice-involved women. And we're really going to be centering the experiences of their stories regarding their insight from their lens, and really kind of highlight some of the pieces that we want to kind of bring up again when we talk about crimeless revocation and the earn release program, since a lot of us are working to get some really concrete stuff changed up in this coming year. So for those who may not know who I am, my name is Melissa Luden. I am the regional organizer for the Smart Justice campaign. And briefly, I will allow these fantastic women to go ahead and introduce themselves. But before I go ahead and get started, unfortunately, one of our panelists, Sherry, is not able to participate this evening, but I do have her permission to share some of her pieces of her story as we continue throughout this town hall. So first, I want to go ahead and have Latoya Greer go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. Just want to say I'm extremely excited to be here with all of you amazing women. I am Latoya Greer Bay. I am the organizer for the Free Campaign in Madison, directly and indirectly impacted by the system. Yeah, I've been doing this work for about 3 years. Has definitely been a journey for me, being able to be a part of the change that I wanted to see in my community. So thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Melissa, for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Thanks, Latoya. Next, I'll have Crystal Arroyo go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Crystal Arroyo, as she stated, and I am the Free Campaign organizer for the Milwaukee chapter. And I'm just very thankful to be here tonight, excited about this discussion of women for once, and the platform that we have to discuss how important it is to speak on women incarcerations. And I am also directly impacted and indirectly impacted. I've been doing this work for several years while incarcerated prior to being an organizer. And based on my lived experience, I'm more than happy to share everything that I have experienced during that time of my life. So I'm very grateful to be here tonight. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Crystal. Next, I'll have Ariel Garvish. If I'm saying your last name correct,
Yes.
Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
My name is Ariel Garvish. I am a real estate agent with Century 21 Moves in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I serve on the Vital Voices program with trauma-informed care with Sheboygan Health and Human Resources. I have been previously incarcerated, so I have my passion has been to openly share and be transparent about my journey, my resources and everything. So I'm super honored to be here. I can't even believe it, I'm here. I'm like super nervous, so bear with me, guys. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's safe to say, I mean, like I tell everybody, you know, I still get a little bit nervous when we do this. So I'm really thankful to have you also. Thank you. You know, I've spent a lot of time, you know, Ariel, I've recently been getting to know you a little bit more. It's certainly, you know, been a privilege. I've been able to see you do a lot of amazing things through social media. Latoya, I've had the privilege of going through a leadership training with you, and Crystal, we go back to the barracks at TY. So, you know, definitely some relationship built up there. But to go ahead and get started, I want to go ahead and start off, we're going to go with you, Latoya. Latoya, I want you to briefly talk about, you work for Free. You're a community organizer out of Madison. Tell us a little bit about what Free does, because I think a lot of people in the state of Wisconsin don't know Free, the Free campaign, as well as, you know, why this type of work and working with women is so important to you.
Yeah, so the Free Campaign is an organization started by directly and indirectly impacted women. And the free campaign was needed, because a lot of the times when you go to these tables, when I was sitting at the tables, we spoke a lot with, you know, brothers who sometimes dominate the table, very amazing, intelligent, and wise brothers indeed. But a lot of the times when we speak, it's about the situations that they go through when in incarceration, and the situations that women go through are left out of the table, or when it's time to talk about the issues that women are dealing with, it's like we don't want to talk about that, because women go through very sensitive topics that are very separate from the things that males go through. So it's very important. It was important for the women who stepped up and created this space for us to have our voices heard at the table. And it's very important for me because I went through some very traumatizing situations when in incarceration, and just watching my mom go through things. I was arrested with my mom at one point in time. So knowing both of us as women having to go through this continuous role of, in and out of the jails, it's important for us to finally get to the bottom of the root of the issues. So I'm excited to actually take part and, get into the root of the issues that women go through and why we continuously are returning to incarceration and the things that we don't have when in incarceration.
Thank you for that, Latoya. And just to kind of pivot the same question over to you, Crystal, again, working under the Free Campaign out of Milwaukee, really with you, kind of just really thinking about, what drew you to be, I think, an organizer, for free, and where does that, specifically that fire and passion from you come from?
Well, first and foremost, because I did serve a sentence of 9 years for wrongful conviction and 10 years of extended supervision, which I just completed. I know firsthand what it is to be released and face the challenges and barriers while on probation, extended supervision. So knowing those barriers and those challenges, it's important that I'm able to be part of building a bridge to help the women come out that are going to be facing those same challenges that I faced, and even continue to face at times because of the stigma that's placed on us as directly impacted women. So that's what really drives my passion, and just the fact of how the criminal justice system has been constructed, going back to like what Latoya was saying, how it's more designed for the men. So understanding that and knowing that we need to find some space to change that and to raise awareness on that topic, and not just talk about it, but put action in to make that transition for the women more secured and more adaptable and attainable for that woman to be out here and be the productive woman that she can be, and mother and whatever it is back into society.
Thank you for that. And I, even just to go back to what you said, Latoya, one thing all of us, have always, I think, come on board is, certainly supporting the issues that center men and their incarceration. They've always had our full support. And I know in talking to, both of you, it's really also wanting that level of support and being able to listen to what some of those differences may be. And that's certainly important. So again, thank you, Crystal. Kind of moving into you, Ariel, in that you're doing a lot of, fantastic work, and spending time being able to talk to you. I want you to briefly share, with us parts of your story, because now you're vibrant. I see you out there. You're working in, real estate. You're doing so many fantastic things, with Sheboygan County. Can you share a little bit of how that began for you?
So going back to, I was convicted in 2015 while I was on bail. I became pregnant. So what led me to going to Cheetah was my district attorney. We had a county jail or prison, right? And you can utilize more resources in prison. And I was on the Suboxone program, so I was a high risk pregnancy with my son. So what happened during my sentencing, they gave me a year once I was convicted, but with the eligibility for the earned release program. So I agreed, my attorney agreed. So I'm going into this thinking, you know, and they made me eligible for expungement. You know, my district attorney, like, and this isn't the circumstance for everyone. Like, I had someone that genuinely cared about me. She gave me every step that I needed to succeed and, in society's eyes, rehabilitate, right? So I get sentenced, I go to prison, I'm pregnant. Once you get into the max building and you're being staffed, you meet with a social worker and you go through this evaluation to determine if you're minimum, medium, or maximum, right? And then is when I found out, because I only was sentenced to a year, I didn't qualify for the earned release program. So I'm in prison thinking that there was a chance that I was only 5 months pregnant. I was thinking there was a slight chance that I could have my baby at home and still utilize AODA treatment, because I was an addict. That was all they wanted, was treatment. And once I got there, I didn't qualify for that. And then here's the kicker. Because I only had a year, I didn't qualify for the 4-month residential program either. So I really had to jump through hoops just to get any type of AODA treatment. I mean, letters continuously to my social worker, trying to reach out to anyone that will hear me. And in between it all, I'm pregnant. And I'm trying to latch onto any type of programming before I get home. So it was a huge mess once I was sentenced. And no one knew this until I got there. And I'm having my family write my attorney, they're not getting called back. So I'm just sitting there thinking that there was a chance that I could have my child at home, you know, and it didn't happen because I didn't qualify by the prison timelines and standards for the ERP program. If I would have had a year and 1 day, I would have qualified and I probably would have had my child at home. But because of the sentencing timeline, which my district attorney didn't know, the judge didn't know, they were setting me up in every way, you know, in their eyes for me to succeed and be able to come home early. I did qualify for the time modification for your time cut at your 75% mark, but I didn't even know about it until I started asking the women. Like, just the lack of education when you get placed into the system, I had to start asking around. You know, I was like, how do you get out of here early? Like I'm, you know, like, what do we got to do to get out? Like, do people get out? Like, but once I was there, everything that I thought was going to happen for me and what my sentencing was supposed to be didn't happen for me. I didn't spend years and years and years. I did qualify for my time adjustment, my time modification. I wrote my judge, sent in all my programming certificates and everything, wrote the DA, they approved it. It took Madison 3 months even to process my release. I ended up coming home 20 days early. So, I mean, really, and then I was released, and, you know, first time I've been sober in 10 years of my life. You know, I'm 24 years old. I've been using drugs since I was a child, and then also a new mom. The prison set me up with health insurance when I got home and my PO. That was it. It was just a lack of resources.
I just want to, you know, being that we're kind of discussing the earn release program, there's a couple of things that you said that I want to pivot back to. And for those that are tuning in, when Ariel mentioned classification, for those who may not know, when you get sentenced to Tachita is the admissions for all women. And so they determine when you're going through the admission process, how you're going to be classified, like how you said. Are you going to be a minimum status, medium, or maximum? The other thing that you had discussed, and if anybody else has experienced this, you know, in Wisconsin and certain counties, please chime in or let us know or reach out, because this is something even I recently learned, is that Ariel, when you said that when you were going through your sentencing between the DA and the judge, when they gave you that earn release program, they didn't realize that that was something that you would not be able to do based on how that program is ran, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on the time I was sentenced, anything under a year. And it was because I had 2 weeks time served. Like I was right under the mark.
And that draws a lot of questions out of all of the counties, 72 counties we have in Wisconsin. How often is that happening? And, even for you to say that, you had to work hard to say, hey, I want some type of programming while I'm here. The 3-month program at Techeetah, great, but there isn't that incentive for that type of AODA program, and
No,
so
because you don't earn an early release with it.
Mhm.
There's no incentive for it.
Right. And I think that's something as a whole that we need to discuss since, we've heard from the Department of Corrections that that's something that they want to be able to extend the earn release program. That is something that has to get approved through joint finance. But, in your situation, we often see it so many times where when we see people get revocated for violating a rule of their probation, they get sent back maybe a year, which also prevents them from not being able to do any type of programming, I think that way. To pivot a little bit, I'm going to come back to you in a moment, Ariel. Latoya, I think, when we talk about, we've spent a lot of time talking about some of the roots and causes, I think, for women to become incarcerated. And being that we see a lot of women be revocated every single year, about half the population, every year for violating a rule. I think we know that majority of those rules are around substance use related. And the fact that we have a program that, unfortunately, some of these people have not been able to get in, and we know that that's the driver. What are your thoughts, or based on, some of just your own experience? I think when we've talked about that, you want to speak on just a little bit.
So I want to, before even touching on my own experience, we can touch on history. As it was stated, the prison system was never designed for women. It was never designed for human beings, because initially the people who were being captured were slaves, and they were considered 3/5 of a person, which they were not considered full human beings. So when we talk about a system that was developed to dehumanize people in the beginning, I think that says a lot about the system that we're speaking upon. The system should have been abolished when it was started, and something should have been created that instituted growth and development in the homes of people, of human beings, of individuals, not what they call criminals or convicts, because they're human beings above all else. And then to me as a youth, 16, I was, just a teenager being labeled as a gang or being part of a gang because I had more than 5 friends and we would all hang out together, is unacceptable, because then you are targeting youth, in school. We were still in high school. You are targeting school age youth, pushing them not only with the way the school system is set up within itself, pushing them into the systems, the prison systems, but just the way the people who are part of these systems, who can actually make a change in the way that they police people, and they still choose not to, and they target certain people or certain individuals who these systems were never designed to help. So that only leaves a space for a certain or a select amount of people anyway, because the systems aren't designed to help everybody. They're only designed to help a few, because a few more than they expected to started to become a part of the system, if that makes sense. So when we say things like that as a youth, I was not given programs, or they were not creating projects that could instill things that could allow me to flourish as a young adolescent, but they were more so telling me to take my Black ass back to Chicago. Pardon my language, but that's what I was told by an officer, in them exact words. So when you have police officers who look at human beings in that type of way and see them as a color instead of a complexion of a being, then that causes the system in itself to work against me. So there were never programs or anything developed to assist me with flourishing into the adult that I am now. I had to find people like you and people like, the people who I've been sitting at tables with, Crystal and other people, Ariel, for me to even have any idea on the possibilities that I could have for myself.
And that's powerful, what you just said and how you said it like that. And I think that certainly does. It goes back to, obviously studying history. I think studying, how women even ended up in prison for moral acts of behavior, kind of like with what you said and how Black women, were intertwined in that, because that's still a root with all of what we're dealing with. Crystal, kind of where Latoya pivoted based on your experience, as a Latina woman, and the things that you went through, with somebody as well being on, supervision. I think just knowing the numbers that we were seeing today, over 425 or 452 quote women were sent back last year just for some type of revocation. Can you speak a little bit about, your thoughts, I think even just with that, because we're seeing this year after year. We know it's the driver for both men and women. It's the primary driver, we know, for women going back to the prison system. But just even to speak on what that was like when you were on probation and trying to maneuver.
Well, being on extended supervision for 10 years, there's a lot of challenges that I had to face, just as far as like finding the right jobs, having, stability, finding the resources and the support to look for the type of employment that you're seeking. Like, for example, in my experience, I have a paralegal degree that I obtained while incarcerated, and finding a place for me out here with that skill was very challenging, because there's so many people that just don't feel comfortable, because I think of the stigma, giving you that trust to really have that role that you're seeking in that. So like, I was able to, navigate myself into a position of working in a law firm, for example. And I was given that chance. However, I was placed in reception instead of the actual role of a paralegal. I was told time and time again that I would work my way after that 90-day period, that they probationary period. And it ended up being sent to the scans department to just do some data entry. So that was frustrating and discouraging, because when you work very hard at, educating yourself for first to start with, because like Tachita and all the prisons don't actually, women prison facilities do not offer those educational pieces. You have to find your way on your own, which is what I did. I had actually put in a proposal to even get the approval of the superintendent once I hit minimum custody, to be able to do that for myself. A lot of the time while I was incarcerated, I had to figure out what rehabilitation really was and do that again for myself. So going back to what Ariel says, how you don't know how to kind of even navigate yourself in the system. There are no real resources. The social worker that's there, that's supposed to have that lined up for you, is almost like a complacent bias because they don't tell you these things until you bring it to the table. So that's frustrating too, because like you should be able to just have these resources that are there because there are rights as, you know, people that are incarcerated. So you should be able to know what you are able to get that's tangible to you. And they're not pushing that. So you have to basically do that for yourself. And that I found hard. And then, you know, coming out and coming into the real world and not knowing really what to do out here, because like I served 9 years. It was very different. I went in at 21 years old and spent my whole 20s incarcerated. So coming out at 30 years old with what I thought was accomplished in my paralegal diploma was very challenging because, again, the stigma. So, and being impacted by the justice system, it doesn't always necessarily work in your favor. So it's things like that that I feel like, and then the rules, there's just simple rules too that are just like kind of outrageous. Like, for instance, a bank account. You can't, to have like a literacy program or to like own a home, things like that that you want to achieve, you cannot have without the permission of your agent. You can't own a car, you can't finance a car, you can't finance a home. Those are things that I feel are blocking you from actually achieving what they would call normal, you know, moves in society. And because you're coming from a position of being on some type of community supervision, you're facing the barrier of even trying to achieve that goal. So those are things too that are just challenging. You know, it's simple rules like that stop you. And that's just one of the many 25 that are pretty unrealistic at times, because they hold you back from a lot. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that's a lot of just what I had to go through, you know, and even trying to get to go on to like a different state, because I felt so discouraged here in Wisconsin. I even tried the interstate compact during my journey of 10 years. And I ended up going to Florida. And I guess you could say I went from the kettle to the frying pan, because the system is a lot more felony unfriendly in the South. So I was faced with so many more challenges on extended supervision than I faced here in Wisconsin. Each state has their own set of rules and guidelines that just make it almost impossible for you to really get ahead in life. In Florida alone, my experience there was, I was there about 4 years, and it was like I was kind of set up for failure, because when you are employed out there, your agent wants you to, you know, make it very clear that you're under some type of supervision, and they just kind of make it hard for you. Like, not that we don't have to disclose, you know, our criminal backgrounds or whatever they expect you to do on an application or in the workforce, but sometimes that almost blocks you too from growing, because like, if you do go to work in some place and you have to disclose these things, and they won't just want to take you because of that. There's just people that have complicit bias on a lot of different things, employers, and they won't want you because of that alone. Even though you're entitled to work, they'll still feel like it's not for you, like you're not a good fit. And when I mean that, I'm saying like category, like, because I always worked the clerical field. So that was very challenging, trying to get back into the clerical field, trying to transition into that field with the stigma that I came with. So it's like the positions that were available for me were construction. I'm a woman. I don't see myself really doing that. That's like a man's job. Not that it can't be done. It's just not my cup of tea. And roofing, things like that were tangible, and retail and food industry. which I don't knock anybody for doing that. I just felt like I worked too hard in my transition to be demoted, because that's where the society that I was placed in felt I belonged in. So that was a very discouraging struggle for me. And I'll stop right there. I don't want to talk too much, but
I think, when you share that part of your story with me, and then you told me that when you went to Florida, and the fact that you couldn't even go to your daughter's graduation, they wouldn't let you leave the state of Florida to come to your home state, Wisconsin, to, have that moment with your daughter. I think it's one of those things where if you want to leave Wisconsin and you're on supervision, listening to what Crystal had to say, really study the state, get to know the state and how they handle things, because, you could run into like what just happened to you. It could be, worse. And thankfully you came back here. So, and now you're involved in the work that, you do. Before I pivot back over to Ariel, I just want to really talk about, we're hearing a lot of these different things. For those who are aware, yes, the DOC has proposed 7 key changes that they want to make to supervision and the rules of supervision. I think we have yet to really see that in concrete. We're hopeful in that. What we do know going forward is that we still have to continue to have conversations with our legislators, because ultimately to end the process of crimeless revocations, and for those who may not know what a crimeless revocation is that somebody who is on probation commits a rule violation. Maybe they moved from upstairs, they were living upstairs in their apartment and moved to downstairs. They were not able to get to the appointment with their agent due to childcare needs or their employer. People have been getting revocated for that. And the biggest one that we also see is the alcohol and drug piece. Alcohol and drugs is seen as a disability. We need to treat it as such. And yes, it does, state in some of the proposed changes that they want to change that. If, no essential or other crime is involved, we can't be locking those people up. We need to be having preventative and having those programs in our communities. Just to kind of, pivot back over to you, Ariel. When Latoya, and I think even some of the struggles that Crystal was talking about, even like for us being, white women and understanding some of that, privilege, and even with myself, given opportunities that I saw so many people not have, has also really pushed me, I think, in the work that I do because of that. And I know that you share the same thing in that. And I think, for you, when we looked at the discrepancy with your judge, the DA, and the DOC on, the prison piece, but the one thing that, has stood out is you came out strong. You came out, absolutely fighting. I know there's a piece of your story, and I'm not going to push you to share, but I think for those who have always wanted to know, what happens with someone who's pregnant in the system, you shared with me, I think, that moment for you that was crucial, where I think you only were able to be with your child for 24 hours. Are you okay? Would you like to speak on that just for a moment?
Yeah, well, it just really hits home when you guys say that, the prison system is not set up for women, especially pregnant women. This is the system, this is that, what, I'll share my experience. I was staffed as medium. I went to the AB building, which was fine. I had 3 months left in my pregnancy at this point. All of a sudden, when it came back to my last month of pregnancy, I kept getting really odd violations. Like, I went over shower time. You're in the handbook, you're only supposed to shower for 15 minutes. No one really follows that guideline. I went 3 minutes over and I got a violation. 10 days room confinement. All of a sudden, they have lockdown on the building. I have a finished stuffed animal, but with crafts, according to their handbook, you're supposed to mail them out immediately once they're finished. Another day, 10 days room confinement. The last violation I had, I took out my garbage during the wrong day space. Like, they separated the day space between the women on each side. I got another 10 days. The last 30 days of my pregnant, I couldn't leave my fucking cell. You know what I mean? Like, excuse my language, but I could not leave my cell or call my family. And then they wake you up. They woke me up at 5 a.m. the day after my due date and took me to the hospital and had me induced. I like had no choice. That's how it works with the system there. You don't have it. I probably would have went into labor if I could have walked. You know, I could. It's not set up for pregnant women. It's just not. It's not set up for women at all. You have to really jump through hoops for any type of resources in there. I wrote my social worker 6 times. And then finally, I'm asking around. I'm like, has anyone done that AODA? Because a lot of women been there before. That's how I found out about the time modification. I just started asking around, like, you know, hey, how do I get out of here? You know, who runs the program up there? Because you can write those little slips and it gets mailed out to the different building. And I find out it's Miss Hookstead, and I write her. And then 2 days after I gave birth to my son, they gave you 24 hours in the hospital. My son was born at 4:35 p.m. And I left that hospital at 4:30 the next day. Like, they give you 24 hours. At this point, I haven't been able to call nobody for over a month or anything. And luckily, my letter, Miss Hookstead was able to, I don't know what she did, but she was able to get me in the program. I was able to detox safely off my Suboxone in the AODA building. And I was able to take part in the programming. But the prison is not set up for a pregnant woman. They give you your prenatals, yes. But your last meal is at 4, and your snack pack contains a tablespoon of peanut butter with 2 saltines and an apple. And I went a long time without money on my books in there, and I was hungry. They don't give you basic necessities. They don't give you shampoo. They don't give you conditioner. They give you that multi-wash. You know, like your hair literally falls out from using it. They don't give you the basic necessities. I remember how excited I was to get a Q-tip. If you don't have money on your books, and then when it comes to actually working at the prison, you work for 30 cents an hour. And a lot of people don't even know that. A lot of people don't know how much prison workers really get paid for 20 bucks every 2 weeks, you know, just to buy your necessities. And it just makes you wonder where all the funding is really going.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry, it's hard, you know. It was comforting when I was with my son until I had him. And that was, I don't know, it was not a pleasant experience. I had to give birth alone, no family, nothing. A CO broke protocol to hold my hand because I said I was scared. You know, it's just not set up for women to be pregnant in that. It's not. 24 hours is not enough for like the bonding experience with your son. And it takes a lot as a woman and as a mother to say that my bonding experience is still impacted with my son. And my son will be 6 this year because I didn't have that with him. It's just not set up for us. And luckily my county my DA set me up to succeed. She just didn't know. She didn't know that I wouldn't qualify once I got there. Later on, you know, she developed the drug court system with Sheboygan County. She is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I am still really close to her this day. She is like one of my top support people for everything. She got me connected with trauma-informed care that I'm able to serve with them, where like my passion lay. But they just didn't know. They just didn't know. So, you know, I was persistent. I was a persistent drug addict too. I always got what I wanted. like I just moved.
And now
But
you're
I really
persistent for success.
Yeah, well, and I really feel when she was saying all these barriers that comes with it, you know, like I jumped into real estate. I had to jump through hoops to do my predetermination. to even wonder if anyone would trust me, a convict, in society's eyes through a real estate transaction. But I've learned that my credibility comes from my transparency. You know what I mean? So,
I like how
sorry,
you
I'm a
said that.
rambler. I'm
No,
babbling.
you
So if you want to just cut
There's-
me off, just cut me off.
No, you're good. Like, and sit with that. Like she said, your credibility comes with transparency. And I want to acknowledge, I mean, it takes a level of courage, I think, to, to see what she just shared as well as the others. And I highlight that because for myself and the rest of these women, what I can tell you is we're up here doing this because a lot of women aren't making it. A lot of men are not making it. And for those of us who have a drive and a spirit that just doesn't let us stop, we also have to recognize that it's okay for some people who may not, who may need an extra hand. And that's what we're talking about here, is that we need, these things to be changed because of that. Families need to be supported on the front end when it comes to preventative. And if we're going to give somebody and say in a court, if you're going to qualify for the earned release program, dang it, the DOC better give it to them. Because things could have been, I think, even different in that situation. To pivot a little bit for the sake of time, I want to get to some of these questions from the audience. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. But, even for Sherry, who's not here to be here, she was a young lady who was pregnant and just found out that she was pregnant, and to help with her recovery, she went to her doctor and shared with her doctor, hey, I need help. I'm pregnant. I want to get on, a healthy plan. The doctor, prescribed her Suboxone. But because the agent wasn't involved in that process, her thinking she did the right thing, the agent put a hold on her, locked her up for going to her doctor for help. And what she found out in that process is they held her. She ended up getting revocated. And I think in that process, prior to when we talk about alternatives for revocation, is that there's only 13 beds in the state of Wisconsin for pregnant women. 13 still. And in her case, the judge even had said, she should have been able to have gotten into a program and not have been revocated, given an ATR. But she sat and also had to go through a very similar experience that Ariel just shared, with her daughter. And thankfully, these two had family, right? There is a lot of women that don't have anybody to take their kids. They're gone. And that's traumatic. And there isn't anything to help them deal with that. So I think just to pivot and bring it back, changes certainly need to be made and expanded with the earned release program. And we really need to get rid of this crimeless revocation. And so I want to jump into the first question, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So the first question I want to go to, and this is open for all of you. Do you feel like the system failed you? You started using drugs, or I'm sorry, this I think is geared towards, we'll go back to Ariel on this. Do you feel like the system failed you? You started using drugs at a very young age.
Yes and no, because in society's eyes, I'm a success story. I believe in evolution, even in the justice system. I feel like if different things would have been known, my story could have went a little bit different. I could have utilized a different type of resources. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say if I feel like it failed me, because I ended up coming out okay, but I don't know. I feel like it could have went differently. But if not everyone's like me, not everyone is persistent like me. Like you said, we had this conversation before, especially with addicts, we so easily get discouraged. Like we do need that extra hand held. And luckily I did it on my own, but that's not the case for everybody.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of camel back off of you and kind of answer that question as well. Um, I do. In a lot of ways, I do sometimes feel like the system failed me because the system wasn't set to build me. In a lot of the ways, the system was built to challenge me more than it did in other people by keeping me back. A lot of the things that I should have been taught in school, I was not taught. A lot of people, who look like me don't even know the truth about, their history, who we are, and where we come from. So just like knowing that and how the system was created to keep a certain group of people down has definitely hindered me in a number of ways. I was not privileged to have access to certain things in my household, or to know what it was when I was being triggered, or what it was like that I was even experiencing traumas. So certain things like that, I do feel like the system kind of failed me in a way, because my parents weren't given the things that they needed to. My parents weren't, my parents weren't given the things that they needed to effectively sustain themselves. So I do feel like yeah, the system is only built for certain people, and we got to remember that the system. We like to say that the system is broken, but in a lot of ways, the system itself is not broken. It was created just how it is to do exactly what it's doing in the way that it's doing it. So when we talk about, just just how the system was set up, it was set up to fail people. Um, so yeah, I do feel like the system has failed me in a number of ways, even by not having more people with similar experiences to myself who look like me to be more active in the things that the system has created and developed for people.
I agree with you, Latoya. I feel like the system was designed to just oppress. And the fact that the system mistreats people in a way that you don't have the resources and the things you need, you're almost unprepared. And then you're just sent home to figure it all out. So that alone in itself is just a failure, because you're just placed in a position to fail. It's just us, Ariel. Latoya, where are you at?
Sorry about that, sis.
That's okay, honey.
So that's another thing. People forget that we are the first teachers, we are mothers, we are parents. So regardless of whatever it is that we're doing, we always have to be a parent to our children. So I missed the question, sis. I'm sorry, I had to tend to my children.
There was no question, honey. I was just going off of what you said. There is a next question. Our moderator, I think, is having
Having some
connection
internet
issues.
technical
Yeah.
difficulties. Yeah.
So if you want to just go on to the next question. There she goes. Lovely.
Melissa, you showed up right on time. We all just answered the question, that first question.
Were you able to hear me before you all lost me?
No.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let me go in here. Let me pull up. But you did get to the first question?
Yes, the first part of it. And then I think the second part we didn't answer. What could be done from the root causes?
Okay.
Right.
Did any of you want to speak on that one? I know, Ariel, you talked about the connection piece, but not necessarily being root cause, but the trauma piece.
I feel like intervention could be done before a woman enters the DOC. What we talked about today about the different sectors of court system, from trauma informed, mental health, addiction, it's just, this is what I love about trauma informed care. It's not just a program, it's a way of life, you know, and
Right.
they're trying to like inhibit all this stuff into like all of the county resources we have in Sheboygan, economic support, CPS, everything. Like you have to be trained. If you work for the county, you have to be trained in this. And then there's like little me, right? But instead of looking at a situation and analyzing a case at why did you do this, like what happened to you, like, and actually give them resources, because we all know that punishment isn't rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
We all know you don't heal in prison. It's no, like it's a basis of survival in there. And if there was intervention before you even have to enter the system and actually analyze a person for their needs to be rehabilitated, to educate, you know, what are triggers, what are causing, what is the trauma that's happened in your life prior to them entering the system. And you know, it's like you get sentenced, it's either prison, jail, or probation. Like what else could happen before that?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know this. I don't know what could be done, what programs would have to be intact for that to happen. But I feel like the situation, the people will not be recommitting crimes over and over again if they actually got into the healing process of what caused them. Everything's learned behavior. Everything is, I feel like everything is based upon trauma and adverse childhood experiences. And if there's a way to intervene before entering the system, that's how it could go different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And definitely, I think on that preventative side, jumping in real quick, and I am being mindful of time. If we do go over a minute or two, I apologize for my my internet skip out. But real quick, with Latoya and Crystal, can you talk about how the free campaign is engaging around the budget? Crystal, would you like to go first? Or Latoya, you want to go first?
Sure.
Go
So, which budget? The governor's budget? Which?
So when we talk with joint finance, so with the joint finance hearings coming up in March.
Okay. So one of the things that the free campaign is really pushing is to have a space for women at the table. We are just, when it comes to us being spoken upon at the table, we are pushing for them to have more finance for us, to push for housing for women. A lot of women are, you know, separated from their families. You don't have access to housing and incarceration. That is your housing, you know, so you have to come back and, you know, be reintegrated into society. And most women, for one, they don't have housing. And when they do have housing that comes with coming home from incarceration, their families aren't able to be with them. So really pushing for the government to really see that women need to be with their children. When you separate a woman from her child and then to come back into society and to still have to be forced into separation from your children is just unacceptable. So that's definitely something that we're going to be pushing more of, just to include some of the money that they need to be taken away from the $2.5 billion, you know, criminal legal system that does nobody justice, that they need to be investing that money into the education of women, the education of their children, and making sure they can be housed with dignity.
Thank you for that, Latoya. Crystal?
And also there's, you know, the interest in TAG and the fact that there's 7,000 people right now currently eligible for release. So to be able to have treatment alternatives and diversion and expand the ERP program would be the result of people being released within the next 2 to 3 years. Keeping women in the community is the focus. Sending women to prison with issues that are not like committing another crime is just pointless. It doesn't help, and it doesn't do anything for that family reunification piece either. And definitely doesn't help for as far as like money and putting money into more prisons. You could save, like she said, they're in the billions. You could save so many millions of dollars just having alternative to prison resources. Sorry, I got lost in my thoughts right there. But yeah, you know, those are the things that we want to see done, is having that space for women and making sure that they have reentry piece, because not many women coming out of prison have that transitional reentry space for them that involves having them with their child. And that right there is a barrier and a challenge, because if you're coming out and you have to, you know, reconnect with your children and you don't have a place to provide for you and your child, it's almost setting you up for failure. And if you're facing things like, you know, drug issues or whatever the case may be, you could possibly fall back into that pattern because you're just so discouraged. So I just feel like there should be something that's more, you know, solid and tangible for women coming out here, and that involves their children, because women come as a package. Most of the women are mothers, and that's something that really needs to be taken into consideration. And that's what Free is trying to really be consistent at raising awareness in that sense.
And I just want to add, Melissa, with that, 1.5 million of them dollars are specifically for revocations. So we usually, like Wisconsin spends $1.5 million on people who are revocated, have not, you know, committed another crime, but just off of technical rule violations are reincarcerated, causing the citizens, me, I'm a citizen, we're paying literally a salary to arrest people on revocations when we could be using that money to invest into programs or projects that could, you know, keep women out of prison, keep men out of prison. I just really wanted to add that, because $30,000 to $40,000 per person just off of revocation is unacceptable. My salary is barely that much. Okay.
Thank you for that, Latoya. I know it's 7:30. I'm going to keep rolling, I think, for 2 more minutes. I want to give each of you an opportunity to real quick, 30 seconds or maybe less. What is one call to action that you want to ask everybody, or to give everybody that's watching you right now? I'll start off with Latoya.
I would say for the men who are watching, you see us at the tables. When we're at the tables, we're always supporting you. I just ask that you support us just as much as we support you, because we definitely need that same support. We need your voices at the table speaking for women, and not just the women speaking for men with men. And for any person who may be listening who is running for office or is in office, please take into consideration the things that we spoke about, that the things that are needed for mothers, the first teachers to the children. Put yourself in our shoes and imagine if this was you being separated from your household. What would you want for your family? What would you want for your mother?
Thank you, Latoya. Crystal?
Yeah, I honestly ditto to everything that Latoya is saying. And just continue to have this discussion, continue to see that women are a subject matter. It is a concern. We do have the same issues and the same problems that the men are facing, and we have them even a little more intense, because we, like I said, it comes down to the children. And that needs to just be really known. I mean, if you haven't heard it, you heard it now from us who are directly impacted, who've been in the system. Listen deeply to what Ariel said. Touching story. I'm very touched and honored that she shared that. That's deep. We come on here with, you know, not just stories, but we lived it. And it's hard to even share those pieces of our life. So with that, keep in mind that this is real. This is real talk. This isn't from a book. We didn't learn it. We didn't study. We lived it. And that's something that I think needs to be really taken into consideration when laws are being placed. So legislators, if you're out there listening, help us figure this out. Help us make that space and create that space and secure that space. Because if you want to see a better tomorrow, we got to make changes. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Crystal. Ariel?
All right, you already know my butt been crying about this question all day, trying to figure out what would be the correct thing to say. But sorry, my mind is just blown that you guys actually know the budgets, like, for everything, and that's how much money goes into revocations. Like, I'm sorry, this is just blowing my mind right now. And, like, this is why I will always forever share. And anyone, there's so many people that I know that are, like, scared to talk about it, like, share it. I feel like stories impact forever. Like, I've always been about this. Like, it's not about recognition. Like, oh, hooray, Ariel. It's about impact, because there's always, I can't even count in my mind how many people have came to me with very similar stories as mine. That's why I will forever share, until I've been talking about this for 6 years, until finally my story was heard, until finally I got the foot in the door at Health and Human Resources to place my opinion on things. You know, you ladies are phenomenal. Keep doing what you're doing. I urge anyone, if you have been impacted by the justice system, especially a woman, like, share your story, because this is how things change. Because when people know that you've been directly impacted, like, my story's real and raw. You know, I come with full transparency. You know, I will never stop sharing. And I just urge people, like, this is how changes get made. If you have a story, share it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for all that. Again, I want to thank the people that are tuning in, but I want to thank each and every one of you, Latoya, Crystal, Ariel. Thank you for being a part of this conversation tonight. You know, we're leaving with some things. For the audience, I want to quick say, don't just leave here listening. Reach out to your legislators and have a conversation and mention, you know, something in addition to what you heard tonight, because going forward into this new year, it's important that we get a bill on the table and pass to end the crimeless revocation. It's super important. Again, we know the DOC has proposed changes, but we also want these specific things to be in concrete so it becomes a law. If you don't know your legislators, reach out to any of us, myself, Sean, my other colleagues, David Carlson, Nikki Wachowski, and we can help you out with that. Real quick before we close, joint finance. You heard us talk about the earn release program tonight. The biannual budget for the state of Wisconsin is coming up. Our governor is releasing his proposed budget next month. This is extremely important. We need to be aware of how the money for our state is going to get spent for the next 2 years. We know that incarceration is a huge, budget item that gets a lot of money put in. But some of the things that we're asking going forward when we talk about what are we going to be asking the Joint Finance Committee, because they're ultimately the ones that make the decision as to how the money gets spent, and they'll be having hearings starting in March. So please stay tuned for certain things. A couple of things that we're going to be asking is we want to close a prison. We don't need to build a new one. We close a prison, that's $1 billion. That money can be allocated into many different things. You heard us talk about treatment instead of prison, expanding the earn release program. The DOC supports it. We want that committee to be able to say, okay, we're going to put that extra money in to get the additional people, like Crystal said, $7,000 people on the waiting list, and hopefully prevent issues like Ariel ran into, situations, with Sherry. Let's get these people, if they're ordered or sentenced to get the earn release program, they need to get it when they get to the DOC. Raising the age. Wisconsin is 1 out of 4 states that still charges 17-year-olds as adults. For those who don't know, that is a budget item. We spend too much money on that in the state of Wisconsin. We need to get rid of it. Different things with policing, data collection, debtors prison, and justice reinvestment are just a few. I also want to go ahead and invite you. You may already have it in our link. We have a budget training 101 starting January 23rd. That's Saturday, January 23rd. That's going to be from 10 to 1. So that's for people who are just budget training 101, and then for people who participated 2 years ago with us in the budget training work that we did, talking about the success of that and going forward. So please share that link. Make sure you sign up for it. We're looking forward to seeing you on the 23rd. And that's, I want to say, and that's it. I want to just thank you all again for tuning in. Thanks for, we're going a little over time. And please look for our next event. Tune in next week to my colleague Nikki's. She's going to be doing a presentation on stigmas. So please look for that. She's fantastic. And so I look forward to watching that as well. So again, I just want to be able to thank all of you for tuning in, and don't forget to share what you heard today. And if you want to get involved, please follow us at Smart Justice, our Smart Justice group on Facebook for more information. So thank you.